The stock market is now down 21%.
Because we're now down 43%.
What in the world is happening on Wall Street?
It's 2008, and the world as we knew it was collapsing. The global economy is in a free fall, and Wall Street, once a symbol of untouchable wealth, has become a graveyard of shattered fortunes. Nowhere is the fallout more brutal than in Atlantic City. The once thriving gambling mecca built on dreams and decadence is bleeding money. Neon lights flicker over silent streets, empty parking lots, and deserted casino floors. Atlantic City had always relied on high rollers, whales who staked millions and kept the empire alive. But after the crash, they vanished, leaving the city gasping for survival. The boardwalk rots under the weight of despair, and desperation fuels reckless decisions. And that's when the casinos made a fatal mistake. We're on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers in the next 2 months. If you love stories like this one, don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the ride for more content like this one. Now, let's look at what pushed these casinos into such risky decisions. In a frenzy of desperation, the casino bosses began offering ludicrous deals. Rebates on losses, free bets, luxury suites and private jets. They are selling a lifestyle. Anything to get the high rollers back at the tables. These offers were so tempting that they seemed like too good to pass up. But as the casinos scrambled to win back the big players, one man, an unassuming figure in a hoodie, saw an opportunity to exploit the desperation of the industry. Don Johnson. A former jockey with a sharp mind for odds and betting strategies, Johnson wasn't a typical casino player. He wasn't a card counter or a math wizard. He didn't need to be. What he had, however, was a keen understanding of gambling and a unique ability to read the situation. And the situation in Atlantic City was ripe for a player like him to swoop in and make a fortune. It all began with his deep knowledge of the betting world. Johnson had spent years as a jockey learning the ins and outs of horse racing. He understood how odds worked, how to spot value, and how to bet in a way that minimized risk and maximized rewards. But unlike most gamblers, Johnson had also worked as a state regulator for horse racing in multiple states, including Oregon, Idaho, Texas, and Wyoming. This gave him a rare perspective on the world of betting, not only as a player, but as someone who understood the inner workings of the gambling industry. As the financial crisis ravaged Atlantic City, Johnson began to take note of the casino's panic. They were offering outrageous deals to try to lure high rollers back to their tables. Discounts on losses, cash rebates, free bets, luxury suites, and even private jets for the biggest players. It seemed like the casinos were bending over backwards to accommodate anyone with money to spare. But it wasn't just about the money or flashy items. It was about the rules. The casinos were offering changes to their standard blackjack rules, tweaks that, to most players, seemed insignificant. But to Johnson, they were game changers. He started small, $25 hands, $50 hands. But as the offers from the casinos grew more generous, so did his bets. His wagers slowly increased, pushing up to $100,000 per hand. The pit bosses, desperate to make the most of any player willing to take the gamble, hardly blinked. They saw a potential big spender, a whale who might lose millions. What they didn't see was the man sitting at their tables was not a fool, but a man who understood odds better than anyone else in the room. Johnson began negotiating terms with the casinos. At first, they were hesitant. He wasn't a big-name gambler, just a mediocre player, but as his bets grew, so did the attention he drew. The casino executives, convinced they were getting a big fish, started offering him more favorable terms. A 20% rebate on losses? Sure. The ability to double down or split on any 2 cards? Absolutely. The dealer standing on all 17s? No problem. Rules that favored him were added, one by one. To the untrained eye, these might seem like trivial adjustments. Minor concessions meant to keep Johnson happy and playing. But in the world of blackjack, they were massive shifts. Johnson, having worked in the betting world for years, knew exactly how much those changes tilted the odds in his favor. He understood how each rule change would affect his chances of winning. The ability to split his hand up to 4 times, to double down on any 2 cards, and the 20% rebate on losses. Each of these seemingly small shifts reduced the casino's edge. In some cases, it flipped the odds in Johnson's favor. This wasn't just luck. It was strategy. By 2010, the casinos were in too deep. They had already handed Johnson the keys to the kingdom, and now they were about to see the consequences of their actions. Johnson's first stop was the Tropicana Casino in Atlantic City. On the surface, he looked like any other player, a regular guy in a hoodie, not a high roller. But this was no ordinary trip. Johnson wasn't here to gamble for fun. He was here to win big. And the casino? They were about to learn a hard lesson in desperation. At the blackjack tables, Johnson exuded calm and confidence. The pit bosses kept a close eye on him, but he remained unaffected, as if it was just another day at the tables. The first few hours were uneventful. Johnson slowly accumulated chips, carefully assessing the situation. But then, the moment arrived. He placed a $100,000 bet. The dealer showed a 5, a weak card in blackjack, and Johnson saw this coming. The cards were dealt. Johnson was handed 2 8s, a 16. Not a great hand, but a perfect opportunity. He split them. And then, to the shock of everyone at the table, he was dealt 2 more 8s. He split again, and again. 4 separate hands, each with a $100,000 bet. The pit boss's eyes widened. Johnson's calm demeanor never wavered. He wasn't panicking, he was calculating. The cards came. On 2 of the hands, Johnson got a 2. On the other 2, he received a 3. The tension was palpable. Johnson wasn't finished yet. In a move that left everyone in the room gasping, he doubled down on all 4 hands. There was now $800,000 on the table, one hand to decide it all. The dealer, sweating nervously, began to deal the cards. The room held its breath. One by one, the cards fell, and then the dealer busted. Johnson won all 4 hands. $800,000 in chips slid his way. It wasn't just luck. It was a calculated play, a brilliant move that only a player with a deep understanding of the game could pull off. The pit bosses, stunned, could do nothing but watch as Johnson raked in the chips. And this wasn't the end. Over the next 12 hours, Johnson continued to play, expertly exploiting the house's weakness. He walked away from the Tropicana nearly $6 million richer. The Tropicana had finally reached their breaking point with Don's demands and decided to pull the plug on their agreement. Or at least, that's what they thought, until they discovered what had really gone down. The next day, the headlines made it clear. Blackjack player takes Tropicana for nearly $6 million, single-handedly ruins casino's month. The realization hit the casino hard. What they saw as just another high-stakes player had turned into a nightmare. Johnson had played the system so well that he'd left the casino with a massive loss, shattering their financial expectations for the month. The fallout was immediate, and the casinos were scrambling to figure out how they'd been outsmarted. Word spread quickly. The other casinos in Atlantic City took notice. What had just happened was nothing short of a casino heist, a heist that was completely legal. There were no cheats, no card-counting tricks, just a player who understood the game better than the people running it, and a bit of luck. By the time the sun rose over the Atlantic City boardwalk, Johnson had made his mark. He wasn't just a gambler anymore. He was a legend. But this wasn't a fluke. Johnson had 2 more casinos in his sights, and as he moved from one to the next, his strategy remained the same. He negotiated more favorable terms, rebates, rule changes, and other advantages that made the odds even slimmer for the house. By the time he was done, he had taken the Borgata for $5 million and Caesars for $4 million. Johnson had walked away with a total of $15 million. The fallout was swift. Casino executives scrambled to figure out what had just happened. Heads rolled. At the Tropicana, CEO Tony Rodio was fired. The casinos were left reeling, their financial reports in tatters. And the big question on everyone's mind: had the casinos really been fair with their high roller rebates, or had they opened the door for someone like Johnson to exploit the system? After his story was shared on the news, Don Johnson finally explained how he pulled off the impossible. He recalled how, when he first saw the casino's desperation, he recognized an opportunity. the standard odds in blackjack were always in the casino's favor by about 1.5%. It wasn't much, but it was enough to guarantee consistent profit. But then, with free bets and discounts on losses being thrown around, he saw how those small changes could shift the balance in his favor. The idea began to take shape in his mind. He analyzed the game, identifying subtle adjustments that could be made. The soft 17 rule, the ability to double down, and splitting hands. All these changes combined with the casino's own incentives dramatically reduced the house advantage to 0.253%. The numbers were undeniable. What had once been a game stacked against him had now become almost a 50-50 proposition. Don had to pause and reflect. How did the casinos miss it? How did they fail to see the risks in their own rule changes? For an industry expert like him, it was simple. "I just think somebody missed the math when they did the numbers on it," he said. The casinos were swinging for the fences, focused only on winning big, but they overlooked the small details that could cost them everything. In the end, Don acknowledged the role of luck in his success. "I'll take luck over any other skill," he admitted. "It's the perfect combination of timing and opportunity. Eventually, someone would have whacked them, and I'm just glad it was me in the end." He had cracked the code not through magic, but through careful calculation and a little bit of fortune. The casinos had made their fatal mistake, and Don Johnson was the one who capitalized on it. For Don, it wasn't about cheating. It was about outsmarting the casinos by leveraging their own desperation. His success wasn't about card counting or illegal tactics. It was about understanding the odds, negotiating favorable terms, luck, and using the casino's own rules against them. The casinos learned a harsh lesson that day. Even when the odds are in their favor, the house doesn't always win. And that's how Don Johnson walked away with $15 million, leaving Atlantic City reeling. It wasn't just luck. It was about knowing how to exploit the system. The legendary gambler proved that with the right strategy and a bit of fortune, the house can lose. Curious to hear more incredible stories from the world of gambling? Hit that like button and subscribe to catch the next big win.